Welcome to Akhand Vidyashram, the first institute of impeccable wisdom, the divine reflex, the divine reflex arch, the divine reflex action. Devyank, the walking, talking encyclopedia. My mission, the impeccable wisdom, knowing which everything is fully known. My greatest discovery, Devyank, the divine design of nature, with which the perfect objects are designed and created. Devyank is the reward of 60 years of integrated education. Now let's understand how reflex arch or reflex action is explained in our books. This is a picture, standard picture, which you find in the books. The best picture I have chosen, which is much more integrated than other picture. Let's not talk of it. As for reflex arch, this is what is conveyed as a reflex arch for reflex action. Skin acts as a skin receptor for sensation of the touch or pain or temperature. The information is carried from receptor through sensory nerve to the posterior part of spinal cord through dorsal root ganglion. And this is one component which is sensory component. Efferent. Then you have a gray matter in the spinal cord which does the evaluation, or you call it interneuron. And they evaluate the sensory information and what action to be taken. That is finally information is given to the motor component for execution. And motor component or motor nerves arise from the interior horn cells, whereas sensory go to the posterior part. And then through the motor nerves, information is carried to the muscles for execution. So this is the information which everyone from school, college to the university is given the information about reflex arch and reflex action is. You have skin, there's a skin receptors, sensory receptors, then you have a sensory nerve to the posterior part of the brain or the spinal cord, then interneurons, the gray matter, evaluation, and motor component and the muscle. This information is what is given. I cannot find fault with it. But I do believe science is simplified, but oversimplification is not science. There is something missing in this, which I would like to bring forth in this particular video. A prime objective of Akhand Vidyashram is impeccable wisdom, knowing which everything is fully known, not anything which is just some information. I want a holistic, integrated wisdom so that we can be perfectly healthy, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. So we can lead our role as the custodians of the world effectively. For that, wisdom is only one which is important. Everything else is secondary. Now, to elaborate on the particular reflex, this further thing why I touched sensations as one of the sensations called sparsh, and in this picture is from there, skin upper part, and you have 7 skin receptors which take different kinds of information. Like free nerve endings are responsible for pain and temperature. 3 nerve endings are receptors are for fine touch, and 3 receptors are for pressure, touch, or deep reflexes, or vibration and proprioception. So 7 kinds of receptors in the skin perceive the information from the external world with respect to the touch is concerned. Is one of the 5 senses. Then information from receptors is carried through neuron cells which have got 10 parts. I'm again saying that 10 parts. Number 1 is a dendrite, which is associated with the receptors in the skin. Then information goes to cell membrane, cell body, nucleus, axon hill, nodes of Ranvier, Schwann cells, myelin sheath, axon terminal, and synaptic end bulb, which carries the information to either the next neuron or to the muscles. So this particular information also should be kept because it's going to be added to the receptors to this to be carried to the posterior part of the spinal cord for sensory information. And interneurons also are mirror neurons. They also have 10 parts. They evaluate the whole thing is also in the same process, and then appropriate action to be taken is conveyed to the motor nerves to be executed by muscle. So this now arch is made little more elaborate to understand the depth of it. Just giving this small information, this is this, no, but I think we should know each and every stage in detail. So this is a detailed information about sensory nerves as well as motor nerves as well as interneuron nerves. Again, I'm repeating the divine nerve action potential is to show if we understand this particular picture very clearly, here which I have said, it is better than other pictures which we normally talk. So talking about slow sodium ion influx for gradual thing from some resting membrane pressure to threshold value was something I highlighted. And also sodium potassium ATP pump, which helps efflux of sodium ions and influx of potassium ion to lead to hyperpolarization, and then influx of sodium to bring it a resting membrane potential is also the three main points which I highlighted which were missing in the information. But without that you can't understand the whole concept. So very clear, skin receptors, sensory nerves, and this is the action potential in the sensory nerves as the motor is complete how the information is carried. If there is a sub-threshold stimulus, you can have only graded local potential. But for reflex action, a response, you got to have threshold value and then depolarization action potential to convey the message to the next nerve or to the muscle for executive action. So that's the reason I'm again saying this also has to be understood if you have to understand impeccable wisdom of reflex arch and action to make optimum use so that we are physically healthy, emotionally stable, mentally powerful, and spiritually integrated. Now, as I've been again and again saying, we got to have impeccable wisdom. We cannot make science too simplified. That is not science. Detailed, step by step knowledge or wisdom is absolutely essential so that we can do things in proper. So in this particular slide, I'm talking about definition first. And this definition is different from the definition you read in books. I'm here bringing a new definition which is holistic, simple, to the point. A spontaneous motor response to a sensory threshold stimulus. Emphasis on A. Spontaneous means immediate, autonomic, involuntary. It has to be immediate, involuntary, autonomic, spontaneous, immediate. And it should be motor response to a sensory threshold stimulus. The sensory stimulus should have threshold value. Otherwise, reflex action cannot take place. That's the reason I'm emphasizing on sensory threshold stimulus. If it does not have, you will not have a complete reflex arch as an impeccable wisdom. That's number one. But in this picture, also I have written central evaluating neurons on one side and also put lateral horn cells. But in the information for sensory component goes to the dorsal root ganglion, posterior part of the central nervous system, where the execution of the motor component is from anterior horn cells of the spinal cord. But what is lateral horn cells? Why did I put it? Let's talk about it. Autonomic nerve fibers arise from lateral horn cells. And why? Let us understand first what are the sensory threshold stimuli normally we talk about it. Normally we talk about mechanical stimuli which are associated with skin and touch. Then chemical stimulus are there two special senses which are chemical in nature. One is smell, another is taste. They mediate chemically only. Then you have two sensations which are electrical stimuli, are actually receptors responsive. One is eyes for vision, another ears for hearing. Hearing and vision are electrical, taste and smell are chemical, and touch is mechanical. These three have been highlighted for the books, but almost everybody forgets there is something called psychological stimulus, which is mediated through the autonomic nervous system, and in my opinion is even more powerful, and most of people are not able to control it. As a result, they suffer from psychosomatic disorders. And we are suffering from psychosomatic disorders because we don't understand this particular stimulus and how to protect ourselves from this to lead a perfectly healthy, emotionally stable, mentally powerful, and spiritually integrated as a perfect human being, capable of doing wonders without suffering from psychosomatic disorders. This particular stimulus has to be understood completely. Central evaluate system, spinal cord and brain, there's no doubt about it. But the motor response is again something which I would like to throw light. In the pictures we have, it is straightways motor neurons to effector and response. But there is a gap between motor nerves and the muscles, and that is called neuromuscular junction. We got to understand what happens in neuromuscular junction between motor neurons and the muscles. And there are three different kinds of muscles. You have skeletal muscles, you have smooth muscles, you have cardiac muscles. And their action potential is very different. As I told you, resting membrane potential in skeletal muscle is minus 90 millivolts, whereas nerves is minus 70. Now, there's a difference there. So how this works, and I think we should have a picture very, very clear on that. If you want to understand reflex arch, reflex action completely, and call it impeccable wisdom, knowing which everything is fully known, let's go to the next slide and there are 10 stages of divine neuromuscular junction. As I told you, neuromuscular junction is between the end part of the neuron cell from anterior horn cells to the muscle. Those 10 stages we have covered. 10 stages action potential we have understood. Now, between end part of axon and to the muscle, there is a gap, there is a cleft, there is a synapse. So one part is presynaptic part, another is cleft, then postsynaptic part. Now let's understand these three components also very, very clear. Neuron cells, by and large, the end part contain lot of mitochondria. Why do we collect plenty of mitochondria? Because we need lot of ATP for energy. At the same time, you need to produce acetyl-CoA, which is absolutely essential for the formation of acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter for neuromuscular junction. Whereas acetyl-CoA is produced in the mitochondria from glucose, one part. Then it comes out of the mitochondria to cytoplasm of the axon neuron cell. Then you have choline from extracellular fluid through the calcium channel blocker comes inside the cytoplasm. So you have choline separately from the interstitial fluid or extracellular fluid around the neuron cell, and then these put together are fused together with the help of enzyme called choline acetyl transferase. With that, acetylcholine is formed inside the vesicles. You can see the picture. Acetylcholine is formed, gets into vesicle and stored there. And whenever it's required, you need calcium entering through the calcium channels to release acetylcholine from synaptic vesicles. So I'm sure now the sequence is very clear. Why you have a calcium channel there through which choline also comes. Also calcium comes in to release acetylcholine from the vesicles. Is that very clear? Sure, great. Then through a process called exotosis, acetylcholine is released. Acetylcholine released from the preganglion, called the end plate of the axon terminal is released through exotosis into the cleft. Acetylcholine acts on nicotinic acetylcholine receptor. You can see that there are cholinergic receptors on the muscles. Acetylcholine is getting fixed there. And then through the open calcium channels, acetylcholine enters into the muscles, sarcoplasm, other thing, and as a result, post-excitatory, post-synaptic potential is created. See, called excitatory post-synaptic is normally called EPSP. Acetylcholine produces excitation to produce muscular contraction thereafter. After having produced the muscle contraction with the help of sodium and acetylcholine, you can see, then acetylcholine is dissolved with the help of acetylcholine enzyme. Acetylcholine is dissolved into acetic acid and choline. And choline is reabsorbed for reuse. I think once this particular process is understood, mitochondria produce a cycle, then acetylcholine into vesicles and is released with the help of calcium through the process of exostosis into the cleft and then getting fixed into cholinergic receptors or nicotinic receptors on the muscles, and with the calcium, sodium, potassium pump, it goes inside the thing and produces contraction, and acetylcholine is split into acetic acid and choline reabsorbed. And in the process, signal which started from sensory receptors in the skin to the sensory nerve to the spinal cord, interneuron action, from anterior horn the motor nerve through neuromuscular junction to the muscle, the action is complete. Now, I think we have a detailed flow chart of stimulus in the skin and muscular contraction. Now you can see how many missing links were there. As a result, you will have a confusion there. So simplification, oversimplification is not science, and I'm just trying to bring each step by step so that you can understand the whole thing very clearly. But I have a little note I have added. It is written that acetylcholine can produce excitatory postsynaptic potential ESPS. But some books also say acetylcholine can also produce inhibitory postsynaptic potential. But somehow or other, I am of the opinion divine nature by and large does not play a game of dice. It does not have a product which can do two opposing actions. I am convinced beyond doubt acetylcholine is excitatory only. For example, let's take sympathetic nervous system. You have preganglion fibers as well as postganglion fibers in sympathetic system. Both at the preganglion fibers and postganglion fibers, neurotransmitter is acetylcholine in parasympathetic system. But in sympathetic system, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter at preganglion fibers, but at the postganglion fibers, it is or noradrenaline, which can be closely associated with nicotine. And I'm sure if we go deep into analysis of this, you will find quote in quote, acetylcholine is only doing excitatory part, not inhibitory, because inhibitory part is normally done by the subsequent nature of the nerve, which is going to bring the execution. So, like bringing it to the muscles is one part, and then excitatory I can understand. But if you're going to talk of parasympathetic in the heart muscles, where 10 stages of nerve conduction, heart nerve conduction system is going to take part. If acetylcholine is used from parasympathetic, it's going to reduce heart rate. It's not because of acetylcholine, it is because the characteristics of that particular nature, excitation, is actually to block, because sympathetic fibers have a different character, post-sympathetic, parasympathetic, totally different. So we cannot confuse ourselves giving that example as a sympathetic and parasympathetic with respect to heart rate or release of insulin to bring down sugar. I think that needs a different kind of discussion, which we'll take it up at a later date to explain. Okay, is excitatory because the nature of the second segment is different, and for that excitation is done by acetylcholine, but not inhibition. But inhibition in the end result is because the subsequent nature of the fibers which are created, not of acetylcholine as such. It only can excite the next stage. It cannot inhibit. And I think at this particular juncture, I will leave it at that. From that, let me now say it again. I'm glad one by one I'm able to throw light on the kind of knowledge, the best of knowledge which we have in books from school, college to university. The one which I start with is the best, detailed. But at the same time, I say this is too simplified to understand every step by step complete. And my desire is to impeccable wisdom, complete from A to Z, step by step, without any confusion whatsoever. So from that point of view, I think this is another beautiful video to talk in detail, which I'm sure everyone, it's not only for medical students, I think for everyone who's interested in having a perfect physical, emotional, mental, spiritual health, and not to suffer from psychosomatic disorders, this knowledge will definitely help. And from my own personal angle, everyone should make sure that they have more than enough amount of acetylcholine as a neurotransmitter in the body. For that, they should make sure the content of choline or methionine and associated amino acids which go into the formation of acetylcholine is abundant. Diet should not be deficient in choline or methionine. As a result, you could suffer from myasthenia gravis and many other problems. If you want to have a perfect reflexive actually immediately done, you will not suffer from any accident. You will not have any problem with negative feedback mechanism, not a problem with positive feedback mechanism, and you could be healthy. And carry home message here is amount of acetylcholine manufactured or synthesized in your neuronervous system should be adequate for appropriate immediate muscular response to every threshold stimulus, whether it's mechanical, chemical, electrical, or psychological. And I'm sure we could do wonders thereafter. And only with this knowledge, I'm literally trying to use that wisdom for myself. And I find I'm much more healthier than what I was 20, 30, 40 years ago. Anyway, thank you very much for kind listening. And I'm sure if you carefully listen to this, understand it, and bring in your life, you could be perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise, and happy. Anyway, thank you very much.